no publisher is actually doing anything to sell this flood of product, to get people excited about this flood of product, to let them know that it exists. So it's entirely upon us as retailers, and we don't have the bandwidth.
Come on and visit for any occasion. Don't keep patting down waiting, comics and conversation. Keep the conversation moving along. Keep reading comics, keep your local store strong. If it's hard, then it's a job for the challengers. Comics and conversation, y'all.
From Challengers Comics and Conversation in Chicago, this is Contest of Challengers.
Welcome to Contest of Challengers, a comics industry business podcast on the Yak Channel Podcast Network. And this is a weird episode. This episode was fraught with technical difficulties that we didn't realize until I got to the editing phase. Dal and I had an hour-and-a-half conversation with someone we've long respected and admired in the industry, and someone whose store we've followed as closely as we follow our own, fellow retailer Brian Hibbs from Comix Experience in San Francisco. And we had a great time talking with Brian. We talked about a bunch of different things in the industry, but it turns out the microphone configuration was not set up properly on our end, so it didn't record our voices. So basically, we had an hour and a half of just Brian's side of the conversation. So what I've had to do is rebuild our half of the conversation just to give you enough of an idea to know what Brian is talking about. So you will actually get to hear me responding to him, even though Dal was a major part of this conversation. Unfortunately, he's not part of this. Sorry about that, fans of Dal, which of course we all are. But in the meantime, please welcome Brian Hibbs.
Hello. Oh man, thanks for having me on. I'm a big fan of the podcast, actually.
Oh, thanks very much. And I'm sure you've heard that we've mentioned you in the last couple of episodes because our yearly recaps that we do as far as posting what's been selling for us on social media, we took deliberately from you. And in all of our website postings, it'll even say that we took it from you, and we at least credit you for that. So we're very happy to have you here. And while it's great to have you, we don't necessarily have any set agenda for this podcast. I figure this will just be a couple of retailers talking about selling comics.
I didn't have an agenda walking in. I just, like I said, I enjoyed listening to the podcast last time. And there were various points where you were talking about things about your business that felt like they needed someone to go either, yes, that is universally experienced by everybody, or no, that's actually really just you. I mean, I don't have exact memories of what things were what, but there were definitely points where it seemed like you were asking questions.
Oh man, we ask questions every single day because we have no idea what we're doing. But at least there's two of us, so we each have somebody else to blame.
I couldn't imagine, just speaking personally, I could not imagine having a partner. I'd kill them. Yeah, it's really interesting to me that comics, unlike any other retail environment that I can think of at all, if you walk into any two comic book stores, they're probably very little like each other. And I think it's one of the most powerful strengths that we have, actually, even though it, of course, weakens us in a couple of different ways. But I don't know. I find it amazing. I mean, hell, I own two stores now, right? Because I bought a second store, somewhat recently. And those two stores are completely fucking different from one another.
Not to mention the different types of comic book stores that exist around the world. There's comic book stores, which I think both of us fall into that category. There's the old school 80s comic book shops where every corner is crammed full of something. There's the back issue palaces, which are great places to fill in your collection. And then there's the pop culture stores that have a whole bunch of different things aside from comics.
Yeah, there's also, though I'm not quite sure how successful they really are, there's the we only sell independent comics. No, really, I mean actual independent comics store.
Yeah, for sure, like Quimby's right here in Chicago. Although I guess they're more of an alternative bookstore that happens to sell alternative comics as well.
Yeah, there's Desert Island in Brooklyn, which only does independent and small press comics. There's Alternative Comics, or no, are they called Wow Cool? I can't remember. Near Cupertino. There's at least one more. I think there's one in the LA area that only does alt comics. But yes, I mean, I take your point. There are several types of stores that you can usually fit people into. But I'm always amazed at how the product mix, and not just the mix, but like just the emphasis of what you put on things completely depends on the owner and what the owner wants to do and what the owner's vision of comics is.
Since your second store, your Outpost store, was an existing store that you acquired, were you worried about the perception people would have of you coming in and potentially changing their store that they know and love, and making it this thing that you are forcing upon them?
You know, it's interesting. I mean, because I didn't get the second store until the first store had been around for 25 years, it was actually really easy for me to adapt to the second store. I think that if I had been earlier in my career, I would have tried to like force it into being something else. But by having a store for that long and understanding just what you're saying about how it's really the customers who inform how they're like a lens through which you push your desires, right? Like I like stores that are book focused. I like stores that focus on good reads as opposed to what's necessarily popular, blah 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 blah. Both stores do that, but one store does it like in a very extreme way because that's my baby, and the other store, it's what they want. I'm still going to always try and push quote unquote better comics, but it's their store. So the first thing I would say is that I tend to think that despite our awareness as owners of what's going on in our city, I tend to think that the actual customers of the stores in any given city are actually very balkanized. They're probably not going to multiple stores. They have a home store, and that's where they shop, and that's that. So I'm not even really sure how many of the people at Outpost, the second store, really knew very much about our main store at all. And I don't know if you would find the same thing in Chicago.
How far away from each other are your two stores?
San Francisco's only 7 miles by 7 miles. It's 49 square miles. So, we're about 3.5 miles away, but it's on the other side of the universe as far as people are concerned.
Once you got two stores, did customers of either store decide to pull their subscriptions at the other store?
Yeah, because, in the case of a couple of Outpost customers, like, oh, wow, we didn't realize there was such a huge inventory you could buy. And in a couple of Experience customers, it was, I've been shopping here because I was loyal, but I actually moved like 10 years ago and I wanted to shop over there, which is kind of great, Options are always good, yeah.
How long has Comix Experience been a store?
We opened up April 1st, 1989. So we are coming up on 29 years in April. Yeah, and I worked at another store before that as well for about 3 years. So yeah, no, I've been selling comics in one form or another. And if we even count, like I worked at Capital City for a little while in between stores. So like by that count, I'm up to 35 or 36, I think.
Oh man, you got me beat. I'm only coming up on 28 years.
I don't know how to do anything else at this point, right?
How about it? No marketable skills outside of the comics industry. That's us.
Can we talk a little bit about how the market's doing?
Yeah, you bet.
So one of my things that, and obviously your diamond pre-orders are not the sum of what your sales are, but they are at least a notional idea of where your business might be going in the next couple of months. And I just turned in, and I'm assuming that you guys are just about to turn in your most recent diamond order, which is for March shipping books.
Yeah, we turned it in Wednesday.
And in my case, it was the lowest pre-order I've turned in at least 20 years. I'm not going to go back to say, I can't say ever, because, ever goes back a long time. But it's been a really long time since I've turned in an order this low. And the second worst one was the order that I turned in for February, and the third worst one was the one I turned in for January. So I'm a little worried at this particular moment in time.
Yeah, and while we're comfortable now in our sell-through percentage and we're ordering low enough that we're not necessarily spending too much money, there's still only a set amount of money that the product we're ordering can bring in, and it's significantly lower than it's been in a while. So even with a full sell-through, our percentages are high, but our actual take-home money is low. And our current weekly diamond invoices are roughly 75% new product and 25% restock, which is a little bit different than it used to be. It used to be more 80-20 for new stuff.
But that, the thing is that's if you're controlling your inventory correctly, that's always a good thing to spend money on. Right? Like it always works itself out. I sold my copy of Watchmen. I'm getting another copy of Watchmen. I will sell that copy of Watchmen. The only problem is if you're, if like you're reordering stuff that is really slow to turn. That was my big problem, sort of that post-Christmas reorder week. I was looking at some of the stuff I was reordering. I'm like, I really shouldn't reorder that with the way the market is right this second. Because that takes a year to sell. And when you do sell it, it's fantastic, but yeah, cash flow, right? Yeah, and I'm assuming that you have a system that's relatively close to mine in that you're ordering just-in-time inventory as much as possible. So something like a Saga 1, you're probably ordering 1 or 2 or 5 copies every single week no matter what.
Absolutely. Saga is definitely a book that we reorder almost every volume every week.
Yeah, that's the same thing for us. So here's a retailer question, which I'm sure all of your audience will be entirely bored by, but I'm utterly fascinated by.
Well, we do this as much for ourselves as for anybody else, so go ahead.
What's the like? So you said that sometimes you order a one on a book that you're not going to sell for 3 or 4 months. What's the longest you're willing to stock a book that you don't sell it?
If a graphic novel hasn't sold in a year, when it does sell, we don't reorder it. 8 months is pushing it, but a year is our main threshold cutoff. I do take a perverse level of joy in setting a reorder quantity to 0 for a book that once we sell it, I'm so glad that it's out of the store because I know we're not going to restock it.
Yeah, 12 to 18 is pretty much the same thing that I do. 18 is kind of my outside. And again, I absolutely carry things that I probably haven't sold for 2 or 3 years even in a couple of cases because I feel like they add to the store and that, if someone came in looking for, I don't know why I hate Saturn, it's not a terrible idea to have a copy on the shelf, even though it never, ever, 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 ever sells.
Yeah, man, it's such a great book and I love it, but I don't even think we have it in stock.
Oh, agreed. But, you just want to, I am a purveyor of quality goods, you want to have it there.
A book we kind of just went through a revival with was Johnny the Homicidal Maniac. It had stopped selling for us a couple years ago, and then we cut it down to 0. And then recently, in the last few months, we've had people asking for it, so we brought it back. So it's a thing we stock again. But there was a couple of years where we didn't even have it on the shelf.
This is where age has its advantage because I remember the period of time when Johnny had a minimum point probably of 9 copies or 10 copies. Just because we couldn't, it was so hot. And I look at that rolling number of like, here's how many you've sold over time, and it's a triple digit number. And I'm like, yeah, that book can sit there for as long as it wants. It's paid for, because I've always in my head really thought of backlist as additive dollars, right? Once you've turned the book a couple of times, it literally is free money. You buy that copy of Watchmen, you pay $10 for it, you sell for $20, so you have a $10 profit. You buy another copy of Watchmen, same thing. Then every copy after that, you basically haven't paid for because your original $10 investment has already come back to you.
So what would you do for a multi-volume series where you can't sell, let's say, volume 4 of a 10-volume series? Let's say you haven't sold a volume 4 in 18 months and you finally sell it. Do you, A, automatically reorder it so you have a full series, B, don't reorder it and hope you just eventually sell the rest. Or C, don't reorder it and then just stop ordering that series because you'll know you'll never sell anything further.
Well, it depends on the book, honestly. I would add a D to that. Probably not restock it, and then go and adjust the minimum points on whatever is in the hammock, right? So books that are big series, what tends to happen is you'll sell the first volume or 3, and you'll sell the last volume or 3, and everything else in the middle dies completely. And
we were using Deadpool as our example, the Brian Posehn and Jerry Dugan version, that we sold so many of volumes 1 and a couple of volume 2s, but could never move anything past that.
Well, so probably in that case, because we've already gone to a series past that, right?
Yeah, thanks to all the restarts and renumbering.
Yeah. Okay. So then at that point, I would in my brain I would categorize that as a completed series, particularly because it's a Marvel book. Because you know that Marvel, if Marvel runs out of stock on any of those volumes, Marvel won't go back to press on them, right? And so once I know that actually makes it really easy just to go, okay, bye bye. I'll give you my counterexample. Just this week, I marked Walking Dead's volume 7 to 22 at 0.
Wow.
Because I was like, we don't turn them enough to do it, to take up this room, and there's no point. I sell the compendiums enough, and it looks to me that's how people are doing it. That's what it looks like over time. So, but again, it's like, so in Walking Dead's case, we're carrying the first 7, or maybe it's 8, and then we won't, I didn't remove them from stock. I just zeroed them so that the next time they sell, they don't reorder, right? Which is a little bit different. And that would be how I would prefer to handle things in most cases. It's not like I don't already have enough, books that I removed from the shelf because they couldn't sell, sitting waiting to be turned.
With Walking Dead in particular, we're finding that people aren't discovering it anymore. That people aren't coming in and picking it up for the first time or just hearing about it.
Well, I don't see with Walking Dead in particular. I think a lot of those customers were getting tuned on by the show. I mean, a lot of them. I think that the show is on a downward curve. Yes.
Agreed. I still watch it, but I find it a lot harder to get the enthusiasm up to watch the newer episodes. They just sit on my DVR for a while.
Here's one just brought upon by that subject. When I first opened my comic book store, I would literally watch anything that had anything to do with comics at all. I paid money to go see Catwoman in the theater. Okay, because there was no, you got 2 hours a year, 4 hours a year maybe that was then. But now I don't give a shit about like all of these television shows and all of these movies and all. Oh my God, who could keep up on it and read the comics too? I can't even keep up in the comics.
Well, comic-wise, that's where there's a benefit to there being 2 of us, because we can each read books that the other one doesn't, and then learn from hearing the other person talk about it to people in the stores. I can't tell you how many of Dal's summaries or pitches I've adapted and just used as my own for books that I haven't even read. But it's funny you should mention the proliferation of comic book material outside of the comics industry, because we were just talking about this last week, how there's so much stuff we used to watch as kids, or we were so excited because we had a thing, like there were Spider-Man cartoons or whatever, but now there's so much of it, it's just like, I'll stick with the source material.
I just worry sometimes that that explosion of other media adapting comics and doing comics work is actually starting to pull away our audience from us.
Well, that and maybe our current political climate has a lot to do with it, with so many people worried about the future, their futures, and just the ability to, have health insurance at the moment and worrying about having it in a year or so. And some of these things are so pressing that people just stopped with outside forms of entertainment.
Yeah, this is the real difference between people in red states and people in blue states, as it were. Because I hear exactly the opposite from people in red states, and I try to explain to them, no, people in San Francisco are very, very, very worried about about money and about the economy and about what's about to happen, because something's about to happen, and they're like, no, that's not true at all. Like, ay.
Yeah, for the past year, I've actually almost been disappointed that our store colors are red, because we are a blue state, or at least a blue city.
Yeah, and I do worry that we're losing at least some people to Marvel Unlimited.
Right? I mean, it's so easy for people who aren't reading the books now just to say, yeah, I can wait for 6 months, and then get everything for such a cheap price.
Yep, exactly. They can wait 6 months, and if it gets exciting again, they're happy to come back to print. Is what I hear.
We do have some people that do both, that have the unlimited subscription, but then sample and check out and see maybe this is what I'm going to wait for on unlimited, or just to be current enough with events, definitely with the big summer crossovers for sure. But what we're doing moving forward in an effort to get people to get used to being in the store and coming into the store regularly and making Challengers a destination for them, aside from weekly books or apart from weekly books, is a series of community events, movie nights, and a women's comics night, and we're bringing back our book club, making them book parties now, and all sorts of other events that try to get people to put us on their regular schedule.
Yeah, no, we do ladies' nights as well, and they're great. They're great. That people are very excited by it. They even have their own little Facebook group for our ladies' night. That they keep in contact outside the ladies' night, which I think is really sweet.
Yeah, we have one for our women's comics night, and I'm actually so impressed with how active it is and how frequently people post, and not just about the upcoming meeting or the subject matter, but just about any of the things that they consider in the realm of the nerdy aspects of what they like. They're more than happy to talk about it specifically on that page.
Trying to get more people in the store is the goal, right? But at the same time, I started looking at the math, and San Francisco is really expensive. And the minimum wage and the projected rent increases and just the cost of doing business in San Francisco. I was looking at the math and I went, it's not going to work really soon, and it's not going to work, again, not because we're not a good, strong store. It's because these external things are changing the parameters, the rules, right? So I had to figure out something else. And the thing I have to do is I have to grow beyond the four walls of the store, right? That's where it needs to lead, I think. Not just, we want people in the four walls of the store, but we want also to get people who aren't in those four walls of the store, and yeah, so that was what I was thinking with the book club. So it's not, most people when they do a book club, it's literally, okay, it's Thursday night and we have our book club. It's the first Thursday a month, let's say, and we have our book club. Come in and hang out, and we've set up our little ring of chairs, and maybe you'll buy the book and maybe you won't, and you know what I mean? Like it's very kind of informal, and it's not.
That is literally how we used to do our book club. Used to.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and because that doesn't work really. I mean, it doesn't not work. You have people who come and they have a good time, but I wanted to do something that was actually celebrating a book, was what I wanted to do. And so I started, again, doing the math of it and figuring, oh, well, if I have X number of members, then I can actually afford to fly people in, put them up in a hotel. It's only for a day, right? And so it's a big ask, to ask of people, really. Will you come halfway across the country and, be in San Francisco for 12 hours? So what we do is we pick a book, and the staff, we vote on a book. It's always, all right, I should even back up a half a step, right? The January book was a book that came out in December. So the staff votes in November about what's coming up in December, what will be the January book. We all vote together, and we vote Eisner style. And Eisner style is where everybody is, if there's 5 selections, you give your first choice 5 points, and then descending points down. So that way you can add up a number, and you can get the sense of a room, right? So sometimes the B-level work, the book that everybody liked but didn't wasn't crazy about is the book that rises to the top because you get only one guy giving that book a 5 and another guy giving that book a 5. You see what I'm saying, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, so the point is so that the staff actually has a say and that it represents collectively what we think is the best comic. And then we ship it out to people. And we do it nationwide. It's not just in the store. We're about 50-50 pickups in the store versus copies that are shipped out. The kids club is more like 60-40. And I have the 2 different clubs every month. And then I bring in the writer and the artist, and we do a live streamed interview with them, a Q&A. The kids is always an hour because the kids don't have an attention span. The adult ones can sometimes last 2.5 hours depending on who the guest is, you know?
And you bring the creators for both clubs, the adult club and the kids club?
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and if we can't, you know, we bring them live stream on a video. Again, it's trying to build the brand outward, and it also seems to me like the kind of thing that is potentially expandable, right? You know, like I'm never gonna get some guy in a place that doesn't have a comic shop to pull their subscription through my store, right? It's just not gonna happen because they can go to DCBS, they'll go to I'm just never gonna be a big boy. I can't play that, but I've got to find a place where I can be the big boy, as it were, you know, and set the rules. So graphic novels, right? Because that's what we are all about. And creators actually. It's really what it is about celebrating the creators and celebrating the work.
What is your fulfillment process like, the packing and shipping of these monthly graphic novels?
So I'm doing it solo just to save the money, right? You know, because the point is to raise money for the store. So there's $0 in labor costs, which is the nice thing. But in terms of time, the kids club usually takes me about 2 hours, and the adult club usually takes me 3, something like that. So about 5 hours of packing.
What rate do you ship your books out at?
Priority mail. Yeah, if it fits, it ships, right? So it's a dependable shipping cost, because that was actually my biggest question when I was trying to figure it out was like, well, what if we pick a really heavy big book one month, you know? won't we get murdered on shipping, you know? And yeah, people are paying their exact shipping costs, and there hasn't been any pushback on that I've seen. So it really kind of shocks me, actually.
And you handle all the label printing and billing and that kind of stuff?
Yeah. We so we use a third-party service called Moonclerk to deal with the subs because it's a recurring charge every month. So I didn't even want to have to mess with trying to run people's credit cards every month.
Oh man, you're right. That would be a nightmare.
So this third-party service does that, and then we have another service called ShipRobot, which has the API from Moonclerk. And so I can easily import them back and forth and print out labels. It takes us like 10 seconds, really. You know, I actually do the paranoid step of going through and looking at the label and comparing them by hand to the list just to make sure there's never a mistake, which probably adds 45 minutes to the process. But if not, it would be a 10-minute process to print out the labels. Yeah, and then you just, and then it's you're literally. It's not like packing 150 individual packages that each have a different thing in them, right? Like bulk packing like that actually goes pretty fast. You just throw on some tunes and you kind of get into the rhythm of it, you know? So yeah, no, that part's easy. Now we're just sort of trying to figure out how do we quote unquote take it national, you know? I mean, it means spending money, and I'm a comic book retailer. A, I'm adverse to spending money as a general rule, and B, I generally don't have very much money to spend, you know. But I mean, I firmly believe, in my heart of hearts, that this seems like the kind of thing that getting 1,000 members nationwide is not even slightly an unreasonable goal. No, and I think, I think you should watch the videos, honestly. So let me just do a little teeny tiny plug here just for this one part.
By all means, plug away.
Go to comicsexperience.com/archives. And that has all of the Graphic Novel Club meetings, the videos of them that we've done from the first one. So there's 60 or so different creators and different interviews that are there. They're just there for free. You can watch. And, people like Charles Forsman, we just had, I'm just looking at the list now. We had Tilly Walden, Tyler Boss, Katie Skelly, Hamish Steele, Brendan Fletcher, Gerard Way, Jillian Tamaki, Gabrielle Bell, Michael DeForge, Lorena Alvarez, so and I still have like a whole year and a half more to go. And then we have the kids club too, which is it's basically the same as the adults club. It's just I can't linger on the answers for long because the kids start getting wiggle butt, I can't go as in depth as I want, but it's basically the same thing, interviewing creators about art and creation and why. And it feels great, and, being able to do the club lets us have all this stuff, stay up there for free for people. We're not, you say we blew past our goals. We didn't. We needed to hit 338 to be revenue neutral for the minimum wage increase. And we never got higher than 290. And we're about 250 now.
That's still a huge number.
Yeah. No, I'm very happy with it as well. It allows us to stay open, like literally. We still haven't hit that exact goal that we need to get all the way. But I think that we can hit 1,000, members if I start spending money and doing that thing, doing the advertising. I think we had a great success over Christmas. We spent some money on Facebook and we actually got a lot of signups. So now we're going to test February and see if it's the same thing or if that was just gift-giving season.
I think going national is a great idea, and I think you'll definitely be able to hit the 1,000 subscribers for it. And I think that there's always a point where people will be just discovering it, like with the stores, like a couple times a week, including today. We had people that come in and say, "Oh, I didn't know you were here. How long have you been here?" And we say, "Oh, just about 10 years. And then they say, 10 years?
Dude, that still happens to me, man. At DeViz. It does. And it's the craziest thing. And because I literally laugh out loud at this point, like I've been here longer than you've been in San Francisco is the answer to that question, But I don't think that, I think that we have a problem as an industry that I don't think that superheroes are going to pave the way anymore. I think that that's really kind of a dead end for this business at this point. Yeah, no, I don't mean to say that superhero comics are going to end per se, because I don't think that. But I think that this idea that Marvel and DC can each publish 30 comics a week set in their universes, it's not 30 comics a week, but it's 20 comics a week. I mean, it is literally 20 or more.
Dal's always had a theory that they should just publish 12 books a month.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, and it's no good for us either, because all of our time is consumed by thinking about stuff that doesn't actually make any money, right? I mean, I don't mean to, poor retailers having to think about ordering comics, but seriously, if you're ordering, 1 and 2 rack copies over subs for most books, which is what we're doing, and not because we want to be racking 1 or 2 rack copies, but because that's all that sells, that every retailer that I know goes out of business from a death of 1,000 paper cuts, right? It's you have to watch those 3s and 5s and 2s and 1s. It makes a difference. And particularly the lower on the scale, like if you're talking about a book where you've got 3 subs, you're probably only going to be ordering 1 copy for the rack. That second copy suddenly becomes risky if you don't sell it, right? Because then your sell-through is only 80%. And it's the worst, because I have to do FOC for 2 stores every week, which, so I have to repeat the process, and it's interesting that because it kind of crushes me, I have to say, every week.
That's where it's a little easier for us, because I do the initial orders and Dal does the FOCs. You have to do everything times 2.
Yeah, I have my managers do the initials, and then I do the FOCs.
Do they do it on their own, or is there any input from you? Do you just have to double check at FOCs?
Yeah. So we actually do a monthly ordering meeting because we have 2 stores. It's we're able to do it. Where Doug and Julie and I sit in a room and talk, and that's we actually do. It's not a podcast because it's not public. Well, I guess it is a podcast technically, but we record it, and then we have a subscription thing for publishers. Where they can hear what it's like $75 a year, to get 12 of these things. I don't know how helpful they actually are to anybody, because it's just you know what it's like because you do it yourself. Is this book going to sell? I don't know, maybe. How many should we order? 5. No, 7. No, okay, well, fine, go. But so we kind of hash it out. We go through the catalog together, and we kind of hash it out. Though we're not usually. I'm not. We tend to talk in really general terms about to that point, not like here's the exact numbers. Then they put in the numbers they want, and I keep those numbers most of the time. I mean, at FOC sometimes I get scared and I'll pull it back. And sometimes I'm right. Usually I'm right when I get scared, and sometimes I'm not. And then I have to go, I'm sorry, I should have listened to you because you had it written down the first time.
When it's a brand new number one and I put a number in, for the most part, Dal doesn't change those because he's just assuming that we'd both be guessing or going from our gut. We're not necessarily basing these numbers off of any facts or any information the other person doesn't have, so he tends to leave the number ones alone and just worries about changing the regular ongoing numbers based off of the sales information that he's gotten that I didn't have at the time because it's time has passed.
Sure, but a lot can change between initial order cutoff and final order cutoff.
And it's to the point now where subscriber numbers or subscriber pre-orders don't really help us because people tend to not pre-order things. They tend to wait until it's out. And I joke that we are beyond a pre-order society now. We work with a post-order system now.
Yeah, hella true. Yeah, and then expecting it, really expecting that you can fill it. Man.
And it's not like they're ordering it because of a review they read or some other information. They just walk in, pick it up, and say, I'd add this, please.
Well, they need to verify with their own eyes that it exists, that that it has art, and yeah, no, it's incredibly frustrating. And so then do you guys then have the next wave of people is the guys who are the speculators who come in on a Wednesday and they're looking for whatever it might be, the hot book that we didn't quite get. It kills me on a lot of image books, but also on some of the publishers let's say Scout or who's the other one who's doing a lot of Chapter House, where I'm bringing in these number ones, but you're only you're bringing in 5 copies because who knows, you can't try every book, it doesn't work. Most of them don't sell, but then they'll snap them all up, this wave of speculators, but they don't want number 2 at all.
Yeah, we have a few speculators, people that come in specifically for a book because they heard about it on Bleeding Cool, and we've got a guy who only buys multiples. He won't buy a single issue. He buys at least 2, if not more. I mean, we've got a rule that you can only buy 2 of a given issue number in the first week that it's on sale, unless you pre-order. You want to pre-order 1,000 copies? Great, totally fine. But for the rack copies that we have on the shelf, you can only take 2 for the first week that it's for sale. After that, it's up for grabs.
Yeah, no, it just kills me because it makes doing the numbers really impossible, even with FOC, because what I'm finding is that on a non-pedigree independent book, okay, and by that I mean, not by someone you can name who their audience is and you can picture in your head who the customers are, right? So if it's not that kind of a book, what I'm finding a lot of times, the drop from number 1 to number 2 can be in the 80 or 90% range, which is horrifying, and it didn't used to be like that. Yeah, no, I mean, it's the same thing is true for us, and we are major stores in major metropolitan areas. So, and I don't, I mean, yes, we're both liberal in liberal cities, but I don't think that we could say that San Francisco and Chicago are particularly alike in other than that, right? So if it's true for both of us, I have to imagine this is true for almost every other store in the nation.
Man, especially those new image titles. There's so many books recently that we've really tried to push. A book like Angelic, which was a lot of fun, and by the 3rd issue we're selling 3 copies over subs, by the 5th issue, it's club only.
Yeah, and it's not anybody's fault, because it's not like we're not trying. Angelic was a book, again, we got behind that. Moonstruck was a book we as a store got behind. The staff was trying to push it, and, people read the first issue, but then they went, nope, no thank you, don't want it anymore. And, and when it comes to graphic novels, I am no longer automatically stocking everything. I haven't for a really long time. You don't get that chance anymore, and particularly if your book went from 20 copies of number one sold to 2 subs in a 3-month period, then I'm really, really, really unlikely to want to stock your book as a graphic novel.
Absolutely agreed. We went through a period where if it was a series that we stocked for the shelf, we would absolutely get the graphic novel, and now we don't. There's series that we feel that we're barely lucky to sell as singles, and if there's no interest in the singles, we don't anticipate there being interest when it's collected. So we are more critical when ordering graphic novels than even of single issues.
Yeah, it's a challenge. I mean, it's a real challenge for ordering, because there are just so many books coming out. I think that the last, what I would call an actual success for Image, where we sold over, let's say, 40, 50 copies of a first issue, was probably Seven to Eternity. Right? Number one. That was 15 months ago. In that 15 months, Image has produced 125 new number ones.
Oh, man.
Yeah, you can't. No, the audience doesn't want that. They don't want that, and they don't want the Marvel and DC. Here's 20 books from our universe anymore. Everybody's got to pare down. Everybody. We need to downsize this market probably in half for production, not in units sold or dollars made. I mean, though obviously we'll all take a short-term hit. I strongly think that we need periodicals to make viable books. And I believe that really firmly in my heart, that a lot of the things that come out, like Image, like Saga. If Saga was a graphic novel only, it would probably be a $25 volume 1, maybe a $30 volume 1, and I don't think that the market can supply that either. And so we need a functioning periodical market, which means everybody's got to put it back in their pants.
Yeah, looking at DC's books for April, their big book is Action Comics 1000. They don't have any other number ones that are in the new catalog. There may be a New Age of DC Heroes number 1 that comes out for the month, but we ordered it in the last catalog. But at first you think there's only one big book for us to push, but then you realize, no, that's perfect. This is a way we can push this to everybody and hopefully have a lot more success with just this one than we would if they had 5 or 8 new number ones for the month.
The problem though is that whole, because like I said, we do a podcast, so I'm really kind of aware of the dead silence when we're flipping the pages in the rest of this. You get past the Spotlight book, and then it's like, okay, flip pages for 5 minutes until not 5 minutes, 20 seconds, but it's like 40 pages you got to flip through of next issue, next issue, next issue, next issue, and there's nothing about any of those next issues that's exciting, right? It's not, oh, it's another issue of Hal Jordan. Like, at least maybe there should be storylines that are not crossing between the books necessarily, but that you can call out the stories rather than just this, here's a flood of stuff and we're not doing anything as a publisher to sell it. That's the thing that kills me. No publisher is actually doing anything to sell this flood of product, to get people excited about this flood of product, to let them know that it exists. So it's entirely upon us as retailers, and we don't have the bandwidth. I can only promote 5 or 6 comics at a time. Sorry. That's how my head works.
Oh, for sure. And we're at a point now where there's many mainstream Marvel and DC books, mainstream characters that we can't even sell over club. For the 3rd time that we can remember, our Aquaman numbers are once again down to club only, none for the shelf. Green Lanterns, 1 or 2 for the shelf. Hal Jordan, slightly higher. But these are mainstream DC heavyweights, and there's not enough interest in it for anybody to pick these books up off the rack.
Well, Green Lantern fans is subs +1,
And we're at a point where a record number of comic properties are weekly episodic television shows watched by millions of people each week. And I'm not assuming that each show has a separate audience. I know there's a lot of overlap, but when we can't stock Green Arrow for the shelf, yet its TV show is in the 6th year with at least 2 million viewers a week, I don't get it.
It's crazy. It's actually crazy. I think, and I don't know how to solve it. Because we're not going to solve. We can't. There's no retailer that's going to be able to solve that. Even if we had a national chain, you couldn't solve that problem. But let's do it on our side. Do you think that if in the cost of your media market in Chicago, and I know what the answer is in the cost of my media market, San Francisco, could you advertise on the CW, do you think, and sell enough copies of those books to make it worth the money you were going to spend?
No, not at all. And there's always a fear that when advertising a property and then saying, hey, get it at this store, somebody might say, well, I'm interested, but that store is nowhere near me, so they go somewhere else. There was a local store that, when The Walking Dead first came out, they filmed and aired commercials during The Walking Dead. That store is out of business.
Wow.
Okay, so let's change gears. Not counting single issue comics or graphic novels, is there a product line that does well for you?
There's really not a product line outside of single issue and graphic novels that we carry. So, we carry Pops at one of the stores, and it does fairly well, but the discount's atrocious. So you don't actually make any money off of them. I don't know how much I really want to grow that business because it would take a huge capital investment for almost no return. So picking up crumbs is kind of how I feel in apparel and pop culture and those kind of things. I don't want to chase trends either because, well, I'm old at this point, I'm over 50. I don't want to try to figure out the next fidget spinner, right? That's not a thing I want to do. And even in that case, that actually looked legitimately that might have even made sense. But I don't want to carry stuff like that. I just want to carry comics. That's what I do. It's what I'm good at.
A non-paper-based product line that does well for us, it's enamel pins.
Oh, true. Enamel pins. Actually, I had kind of spaced on the enamel pins. Yeah. No, the enamel pins actually are doing really, really, really kind of crazy well.
But we 100% agree with you with chasing trends and new products and things. My brother-in-law works for an import company, and he's good at letting me know what's going to be a thing. Like, he let me know about fidget spinners a year before they even were a thing, but it wasn't anything that we cared about. And by the time the comics industry got around to making branded fidget spinners, it was too late. Once people see the trend and then go into production for themselves, it's already too late. You're missing the boat. And there was even a store in Chicago whose 2 front windows had a giant paper banner that just said fidget spinners. And granted, they're more of a card store than a comic store, even though comics is in their name. That's what they wanted to tell people. We've got fidget spinners. But as far as the fidget spinner manufacturers go, there was a point where they said, all right, this trend is over, and just dumped everything they had. They didn't even try to remainder them to wholesalers. They just said, nope, this trend is over, and it's garbage.
Well, and part of it, too, for me is that, I know how to get rid of my extra inventory of comics and graphic novels. I have processes to get them out of the system in ways that are not particularly painful. Usually we break even on most overstock. I don't know that I could even begin to replicate that with fidget spinners. Do you know what I mean? If I had any left over, I just, and I'm really inventory adverse on stuff like that. I don't want to buy 20 units. Give me one and let me reorder.
Yeah, case lots will be the death of the small retail stores. And even normal product lines like t-shirts, which sound like a no-brainer, you never have the right size. People are always looking for what you don't have, and we can't compete with the prices of your major outlets, your Targets or your Walmarts, what have you. And even though we have different shirts, half the people buying the shirts just want it because it's that character, not that exact image.
Yeah, especially like on a t-shirt or something when you're down to like 1 or 2 sizes. It's like, what am I going to do with this? No one's ever going to buy it. Yeah. Oh, poor us retailers.
All right. So is there something that you're currently reading that you're excited about?
No, I hate comics. No, I stopped reading comics years ago. No, that's not true. I don't know. You know what my favorite comic is? The comic that gives me the most joy every single month. I will probably be the only person who will ever say this to you.
Come on, Kaiju Max. Say Kaiju Max.
No, though I like that. I think that's a tremendous book. It's Knights at the Dinner Table.
Brian, are you messing with me?
Yeah, no, I love Knights at the Dinner Table. It is consistently, pound for pound, the best comic book that comes out every month. I wish it didn't have all that crappy game stuff at the back. I just love that comic.
Brian, that is literally Dal's favorite comic book. He reads it every single day. He reads it while eating every meal. He has 3 sets. He's got a set at the store, he's got a set at home, and he's got a digital set on his phone. So wherever he is, he's never without Knights at the Dinner Table.
Wow, I've never actually met anyone else who that's true for. And we actually sell a pretty decent number of copies at the store. We sell 8 copies, on subs. So that feels okay to me at issue 250, whatever they're at. And the books don't sell because they're formatted so badly. Like, I really feel like they need to do, not all the way to Walking Dead size volumes, but substantially larger volumes. Yeah, it's hysterical, and it's dense, and it's funny. Yeah, people get freaked out, I think, by the clip art,
Last year around Dal's birthday, I contacted them about getting him something Knights related that he wouldn't already have, because he has all the books and all the graphic novels. And I thought, hey, what about original art? And they said, oh no, there isn't any.
I haven't met another person obviously I have, because there's 8 people who buy it at my store, but I've never met another retailer who felt the same.
Steve Johansson from Kenzer & Company lives just a few blocks away from us, and even with that, and even with him with such immediate access to books, we can't sell any off the shelf, and we have 2 people in club, and one of those is Dal. In fact, last year for his birthday, Dal had 5 extra copies of the Bag Wars Saga collection, and on his birthday, through social media, he let people know that if they came in and asked for it, he would just give them a copy. And while he did give all 5 copies away, nobody signed up for the book because of it. But anyway, since you brought up Knights at the Dinner Table, and since Dal got super excited, I feel like you guys don't need me here anymore. So I'm just gonna go. No, I think that we're coming to the end, but I mean, we talked about a lot of stuff, but we're still hopeful, right? We're still optimistic.
No, we're hopeful. Look, the medium of comics has never, ever been better. There are so many good books coming out. There are far more good books than we have the bandwidth to promote and support. The problems with the industry are not to do with the content. It has to do with the publishing practices. And I think that there are ways around that. I think that yes, business is off right now. For what we talked about, like for political reasons, et cetera. But that's going to change sooner or later. And as long as we can, just hold on, we'll be fine the other side, because we're going to have so many excellent comics to sell.
Amen, brother. Amen. Brian, thank you so much for being on this podcast. Thank you for listening to this podcast, but thank you for being part of it and for being an inspiration to us and fellow retailers all over the world. Brian writes a column called Tilting at Windmills that is regularly seen on comicsbeat.com. We love it. We love knowing that you exist. We love walking beside you in this path of comics retail. We loved having this conversation today. And please let everybody know where you are in case anybody is in your area, or anybody wants to join the graphic novel club, or if they just want to, stop shopping with us and start shopping in San Francisco.
Yeah, I'm Brian Hibbs, and the store is Comix Experience in San Francisco. It's comics with an X, C-O-M-I-X. ComixExperience.com is the website, and you can also go to www.graphicnovelclub.com to find out more about the book club and the kids' book club.
Thanks for listening. Keep reading comics and
read more comics.
This has been Contest of Challengers. Thanks for listening. Keep reading comics. Challengers is located at 1845 Northwestern Avenue in the Bucktown neighborhood of Chicago, 773-278-0155. Keep up to date with new releases and events at challengerscomics.com. Like Challengers Comics on Facebook, follow @Challengers on Twitter, and help fund this podcast at patreon.com/challengers.